The book and the podcast together called Get a Better Broadcast Podcast and Video Voice. Hello, I'm Peter Stewart with information, advice and anecdotes, how to write right and deal with mic fright and everything in between. And if we haven't touched on those topics yet, we will do as the course continues, free every day. Thank you for listening today. So, we're talking about marking up your scripts. And yesterday we were marking up scripts for breaths, for end of sentences and so on, and in between or within sentences. And we'll look at intonation and marking up for that slightly later on. But in the meantime, by way of contrast, got another script for you, which is in the show notes. Now, this is a script for which I've got the recording and I play it in my training seminars. So if you ever come on my training, I have got probably nearly 100 different clips of audio of newsreaders, commercial voiceovers, narrators, e-book readers and so on, doing great things and doing not so great things. Now you're probably asking yourself, so why aren't you playing them here, Peter? Well, the reason I'm not playing them here is because, particularly if they're bad examples, I mean, there are good examples of people doing something badly, then it's not really right that I put it out for the world to hear, is it? Because even though I wouldn't name them, you may recognise the radio station, you may recognise the voice, you may recognise the reader, you may know them. It may even be you. That's why you're here, because you perhaps want a bit more training, a bit more confidence that your boss at the radio station isn't actually giving you. That wouldn't be fair. However, on the flip side of that, we do learn from listening to other people and nicely examining, critiquing what it is they perhaps not doing quite as well as they might. So I do play them, but only in closed situations when I know who's in the room and we've got an understanding that people aren't going to be recording them and going elsewhere and telling people, oh, you know, your script was ripped apart by the... I'm not ripping them apart, they're critiques. So that's the reason you're not hearing the actual audio examples in these podcasts, because, you know, I'm nice like that. So let's go back to what we're talking about. We've got an actual script in the show notes, all right? So I'd like you to take a look at that, and if you can, either physically mark where you would have the breath breaks, or what you could do is just have a little skim through and see where you think you would put a breath break if you had it written down as an actual script that you could mark with a pen, or maybe on screen instead. So I'm just going to, what should we do? We need a kind of 30-second kind of bit of music, don't we? To so you can, okay, 30, here we go. There's 30 seconds for you to look at that script and work out where you would put the breaths and how you would mark it up for those breaths. Now, I would suggest, if you also look in the show notes, that they go in those particular locations. So, yeah, at the end of that first sentence and maybe halfway through the second. So you would get something like this. I'm going to read that script. You're looking at that second example in your show notes like this. Transatlantic flights from the UK to the United States could take longer because of climate change. Researchers at the University of Reading say that global warming is likely to speed up the jet stream, slowing down planes heading for America. Yeah, obviously I'd like a big breath there at the end of that first sentence so you could hear that I was actually taking a breath there. I mentioned a few moments ago that I've got an actual recording of someone reading this. It's actually a well-known newsreader here in the United Kingdom, incidentally. And I'm now going to read that script in the same way that they read their script, taking the breath where they took their breaths. Here we go. transatlantic flights from the UK to the United States could take longer because of climate change. Researchers at the University of Reading say that global warming is likely to speed up the jet stream, slowing down planes heading for America. Again, I over-egged the pudding so you could actually hear those breaths. But didn't that sound disjointed? Wasn't it annoying to hear those breaths in the wrong place? Didn't you feel as though there was no understanding of the script and what the story actually comprised? Didn't you feel that you were perhaps listening more to the breaths and the intonation caused because of those breaths in the wrong place, rather than the sense of the story? Your understanding of it was lost. Yeah? So hopefully you would agree, yeah, that the resulting unnatural phrasing of the story caused by the breaths in the wrong place made it, well, less natural, more difficult to follow. And once you realise where the reader is breathing so awkwardly in every story, it's difficult to unhear it, and so you listen for the breaths rather than listen for the sense, which is really distracting. And that kind of thing is often referred to as choppiness. Yeah? When a breath is taken after each phrase rather than at the end of a sentence. And it indicates the reader's not really in control of the breathing, or maybe doesn't understand the story and the different phrases that make up that overall story. And it leads to an uneven read that's far from fluent. Tomorrow, the full stop, period, if you like, the full stop and the comma as Get a Better Broadcast podcast and video voice continues. From London, I'm Peter Stewart.